hopefully that means that Jeet and Cody are soon to follow or Corey are soon to follow because I know that they're in the background. While
Yeah,
we're waiting for them to join us, maybe Cody, you can tell us a little bit about how you found the lacrosse program and what you're doing right now.
yeah. So I found out about the lacrosse program, I think my senior year of college when I was at Truman State University. It was I was engaged at the time, and so I wasn't. I was looking at going to law school, so I wasn't necessarily looking at a traditional student affairs program, and so relationship kind of fizzled. And so I was working at the University of Dubuque as a hall director. And I was like, man, I really like this hall director stuff. And so I was like, well, what can I do? So I looked at, I think, Indiana State's program because they had like a partial hybrid counseling focus. So I would have to go to actually Platteville to take some counseling classes. But I was like, oh, that's tough. Like, I don't know Dubuque that well. In the winter, I don't want to mess with it. So I found out about La Crosse's program. It was completely online. And it was like, awesome, let's do this. I think this will be great. And it was. Did the intro class that following summer then when I got in the spring, and actually switched to then another school, St. Norbert College, actually up in Wisconsin. So I finished my last year there for my program. So then actually once I had my master's, I've now been at Miami University for 4 years. So as a hall director, it technically called a first-year advisor, and then it was resident director / first-year advisor, and then next year it's just going to be resident director because we're not doing academic advising anymore. So probably be here maybe 2 more years. Just kind of depends. But yeah, loving it. It's been great. So yeah.
Did I hear you say that you're going to be at NASPA this year?
I am. I am. So we're leaving Friday morning, and they messed up our flights. We have to go to Atlanta to go to New Orleans. So I don't know how that makes sense, but we'll be there Friday night. So it'll be exciting.
Sorry, I'm trying to mute and unmute myself every time I do this. Are you doing any pre-conference sessions, presenting, or have anything in particular you're looking forward to?
Yeah, so I had put in a proposal to do a presentation on our EDL 301 class, which is kind of this intro to being an RA. It's the 6-week sprint class that we teach, and we're trying to do some flipped classroom stuff. We have some assessment data behind it, but for whatever reason, some of the feedback that I got back from NASPA was I didn't include a lot of theory, I didn't include a lot of research behind it. I didn't think for that kind of session necessarily warranted that, and so it got denied. But I think the theme that I have for a lot of the sessions I'm going to is I'm getting to a point where I'm looking for like mid-level type of positions, and so quite a few of what is currently like on my mobile app revolve around that.
I also got rejected from NASPA for one of the sessions that I had proposed for being too academic and too theoretical. So maybe they were looking for some balance between the two.
Yeah, well, it was interesting because we had some colleagues. We're kind of a split department. Some people are like ACPA babies, and then my partner and I are NASPA babies. And so it's interesting that ACPA had a lot of trans focus, which is great. But then the counter, I think, narrative that NASPA is offering this year, and I haven't really seen this a lot before, is kind of like hyper privilege, like including white men in student affairs into the conversation, which I don't know if we need sessions catered to us, but it's just very interesting, like ACPA's focus to then what NASPA is offering. So I think it should be good. New Orleans will be great one way or another. So.
Yeah, New Orleans will be great. It's funny that you should say that because the session that did get accepted that I'm co-presenting on is about straight white college men and how to engage them more in diversity programs, which
Cool.
got rejected from ACPA, interestingly. So.
Yeah. Oh well. Well, that's good. I mean, that one came through. So what day is that one?
That is going to be on Tuesday at 12:10, and I'm co-presenting with my colleague Jorg Vianden, who, did you have him as a professor?
I didn't. I just missed when he was coming in, but my connection to him is I did an interview for a hall director job at the University of Arkansas.
Oh, yeah.
He joined La Crosse, and needless to say, there were still some bitter people in Arkansas. They're like, "Oh, York, he's leaving." I was like, "Yeah, but he's going to a really great place. Like, I got my master's from there." So,
Oh,
yeah.
that's funny. I'm going to quick shoot over to my email and send another message out to Corey and Jeet. But
Sure.
in the meantime, maybe you could tell me a little bit more about some of your favorite memories of being an online student. Like, what were the highlights of being in the SAA online program in earlier years, right? Because you finished in 2011?
Well, I think so. Yeah.
Yeah.
I should probably remember. Yeah, no, I think that's right. Yeah. So I think we were like the third cohort to go through. Um, some of my really favorite memories. So I had a lot of, I think, anxiety because I had a coworker that had just come from the Iowa State program, and at the time, like Nancy Evans was there, and so the Green Book, like, so I was like, oh, I don't know if I can keep up with this guy. Like, he's going to know so much more than me. But I think one of the coolest things about the lacrosse program was I never felt like I was inferior to him. I never felt like the program wasn't as good. Even though initially, especially then, when you tell people, oh, I'm in an online program, there was definitely some reservedness. There was some apprehension about, all right, do you really know what you're talking about or not? So I love the material. I think, especially being in a place like Miami, which, the Magoldas are gone or whatever, or they just left this year, but they are so grounded in theory here that having lacrosse have such a practitioner model was so great because when I supervise grad students, a lot of times they're way up here, and so I have to bring them down to how we actually functionally run a residence hall or navigate a tough situation in their practicum or whatever it may be. And so even though it was online, like I still felt like I learned so much from the practitioners, from the people that were actually a director of residence life or ran the student union or were legal counsel at La Crosse. Like that was probably the best thing that I could ask for. Which having a grad student in like an organizational leadership class now, they have the Bowman and Deal book, like she's using my version, but they're not talking about the four frames at all. And so to me, that's upsetting. Like that's disappointing. That's like the main takeaway from that class.
Right.
But it's nice that like I now get to teach that. Like I have the opportunity to kind of educate her about the four frames or about anything else. Like they don't have a legal class here or anything like that, so we can talk about those issues. And I feel smart talking about that stuff.
Yeah, I think there's still quite a few myths about online education. I have to say, when I joined the lacrosse program about a year and a half ago, it was the part of the job that I was the most nervous about because I didn't always have the most positive experiences with online ed. But for me, the highlights have been that I get to have a classroom of students who are working all across the nation in different functional areas, and their wisdom and their applied experience just makes the conversation so much richer.
Yeah.
And then second, I think I get to hear people's voices in ways that I don't in a traditional classroom environment where if you have a class of 15 people, you hear the same 5 voices over and over,
Mm.
and you might not know what the other 10 are thinking. But online, I don't think you can be anonymous so much. So I get to hear more from introverts, and because they have time to think through what it is they'd like to contribute, their contributions are phenomenal.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, I
would you
remember
comment
that
on
too.
some of those maybe myths or stereotypes that you've encountered and whether any of them are true sometimes?
Yeah, so like I mentioned, I think one of the big ones was you won't know as much. You won't be as educated as an on-campus one. I think another one is you don't really know you don't know how hard it really is or how bad it really is for a grad student because they have practicums to do and they have the student aspect that they're fully ingrained in, and then they're sort of professional staff, but they're not really. Whereas, like when I was going through the program, like I was a full-time hall director and did the program, and I did it at a full-time pace. And so I think I can kind of articulate like how rigorous the coursework is and how all-encompassing it really is. Other myths about I like what you said about like being anonymous, or like you can't be anonymous in the online classroom because yeah, like posting on Blackboard or you know whatever format y'all use now, um, that was something where like that was tied to your participation, and they try to do that in Miami, like you have to speak up, but that we definitely have some introverts in the program that I feel like have a lot to offer but feel intimidated. The other thing that I really appreciate that La Crosse did, at least with their online and maybe it's with their on campus too, is they have a very much like a cohort model where here are the classes and almost the order that you have to take them in. And I have some people that respond back to me and say, oh, well, that's real rigid and that's unfortunate. You didn't have more fluidity in your program. But hearing the issues that my grads have gone through where they have a mix of first and second years, what you talked about is nail on the head. Those second years have such a better language and ability to articulate their points, whereas the first year, you've been here 2 weeks, like you don't know anything about learning partnership model, you don't know about some of these deeper topics, and so you feel left out and you feel kind of pushed to the side. Whereas a discussion board, anybody could post anything. Like the playing field is so level, and so I really appreciated that about La Crosse's program.
Well, I've heard from Jeet, apparently her work computer doesn't have a phone or a camera on it, and her tablet is acting up, so she's running to try and get a laptop. I haven't heard from Corey, but I think he's still out there. At least I hope he is, because we still look at his e-portfolio as an example of what a great portfolio looks like. So it'd be really nice to chat with him in person.
Yeah.
In the meantime, I'm wondering, Cody, if you had the opportunity to reflect a little bit on what life was like after you finished the graduate program. So you were in it,
Yeah.
wrapped it up, then what was your life like? Did you think you're going to have all this free time, and did you? And
So all I've known is res life. So after a couple years of being a hall director at Dubuque, and then switching up to St. Norbert, one, like the amount of doors that opened up just having your master's, and I think having your master's from La Crosse, and having a practitioner system opened up so many doors. Like I remember it was a struggle to try to get a phone interview when I definitely didn't have my master's, and then as I was working through it and job searching, like people didn't want to give you the time of day. But then it was a problem where like I was almost exhausted from the number of like phone interviews I was getting, and I would do it on campus and then have another phone interview lined up, and so that was great. Like that. Oh, waiting for people to join this video call. Sorry. How do I go back? Oh no. Okay. So now I'm just talking to a blank screen. So hopefully this is still working. But after I got the job at Miami, life. I mean, it slowed down a little bit. I just think you kind of gear your professional involvement towards other things. I played tennis in college, and so I decided to teach a tennis class at Miami, and so my position allowed that. And so that was really great to be able to kind of steer that elsewhere. Going to NASPA, like that was something that, yeah, I always wanted to do and do regularly. And so, yeah, I mean, not having the readings and the assignments and the papers, like that does free up your time, but I think it also gives you the opportunity to articulate what your professional interests are and then just start pursuing those. So whether it's joining, a knowledge community with NASPA or ACPA, or going to other conferences, or creating an affinity group on campus, like you find those things, to fill up your time. And so, yeah, so sorry, maybe not a great answer because I kind of went a non-traditional route. I haven't gotten involved with like Glucuho, or anything like that, like really involved with NASPA or ACPA. But I found stuff on campus, and then I still try to insert a little bit of student affairs in my tennis class. Like I have them talk about pay inequality between men and women's tennis. Like that's a paper they have to write. It's like 2 pages, but it just forces them to think. And so you start to find like little ways to insert your interests in the other things that you do. Sorry, that was weird for a sec. Like the screen changed and I got thrown off. My apologies.
No, my apologies. I think I actually exited out of the room mistakenly while I was trying to connect with Corey, who I think is trying to test his camera. Ugh, technology. One of the beauties of online learning, right, is that you have to have patience with these things and trust that they'll work out.
Yeah.
Um, One of the things that the current cohort is talking about is kind of, how do I want to phrase this? That some of the things that we've taught them about collaboration and politics and managing conflict is a little harder to enact based on where they sit in an org chart right now than sometimes the books make it seem. Can you talk a little bit about how your non-academic experience has really contributed to your growth as a professional?
Yeah, that's real. I mean, yeah, that's a really great conversation to have. And I think that's part of maybe where our grad students get stuck too is because we also have a very social justice driven program, and so as soon as they leave, they want to start enacting change. And Miami is a PWI, it's still, in my opinion, kind of slanted that way, and so to try to reverse 150 years of history, like that, is hard and is frustrating. And it was something as small. So my example of this is it was something as small as we just had individual interviews for RAs. Like that was all that we did. It was an hour long. You did one set. Data went in, and then we did a selection. Well, we'd have 300 applicants. We have 63 full-time and grad staff in our department. So you wouldn't see everybody. So I saw that as a problem. Like, we need to be able to see more candidates. So let's do a group process. So like this round robin, carousel, group interaction sort of thing. That took 3 years of convincing and pleading and figuring out logistics. And in all honesty, it wasn't until October of the year we actually did it that we found out we would get approval. And so it felt like I was just spinning my wheels. And this was just within our own department of some of the higher ups to say, listen, our staff is on board. They want to do it. We can make the time work. I'll be happy to coordinate the schedule for all this. Just say yes. Just take a risk and let us do that. And that's hard because if it blows up, guess who you blame? You blame the people at the very top. Like, how dare you let this decision go through? And so that was difficult. And so I think having patience is something that I developed early on, and I knew, or I guess I realized, that no matter how good the idea was, it could be completely worked out and perfect and fit exactly a problem or solve a problem exactly. It may not matter, but just to stay after it and to do that tactfully. I think that's the other thing. Like we have a split department here at Miami, and so housing is on one side and res life is on the other. And so we're now trying to do more of like gender equal housing and trying to integrate men and women more fluidly in the corridors or in our buildings. Because right now we have like a corridor women, corridor men, corridor women, so forth. But we're trying to mix that up a little bit. And so right now we have like this zigzag pattern in our building. I would like to stack them. Like functionally that makes more sense. Cleaning bathrooms, like practicality, stacking makes sense. So I got a response from the head of housing, and he kind of mentioned this a little bit. So I did a little bit of research, and I said, well, numbers will still work out. There's a 3 resident swing between if we do it your way or if we do it this other way I'm proposing. But he mentioned something else in the next email. So then I actually had a one-on-one with my supervisor, and I was like, probably 2 emails is a good place to stop. Like if there's a third, I feel like I'm going to get a call from then Jerry, the director of residence life, and then I'm going to start to get in trouble. I'm going to get told to tone it back. But I don't think that's something I would have figured out like 5 years ago. I would have been like, no, like this is what we're going to do, and I'm going to scorch the earth to make this happen. And it's like that is not good. But bringing it back to Bowman and Deal, I think being able to understand that political frame and understand like who the actors are in different organizations, and then knowing where you fit, and it kind of stinks, but to know like I'm going to take this really good idea, I'm going to put it on the shelf, and I know it's going to work. I just need to find the right colleague or the right person in this organization to make it work, and then it'll happen quick. Like that group process, like once they finally said yes, they're like, okay, well, it's October and you have in January to do it, so let's go. Cool. Okay. Let's make it happen. So you just have to be prepared. You really have to be prepared to, when your idea is accepted, to jump on it, and not get frustrated. Because you eventually, especially if enough good ideas pile up, you'll be in a place where then you have to listen to other people that are saying, hey, I got this really good idea. Cool. Let's take a risk. Let's do it. So to kind of offer the future generation, once you're older, then the grace to offer up new ideas and accept them.
Yeah, that's such a good point. I think I often tell people that in my 20s, I was definitely still acting as though I was a campus activist, and even though I was now an administrator, and had plenty of files in my notes in my personnel file about how I was so insubordinate and critical and like raging. Oh my gosh, Corey joined us. And then in my 30s, I definitely got.
Eventually,
hey, Corey.
Then you have to listen to other people that are saying, hey, I got this really good idea. Cool, let's take a risk. Let's do it. We're delayed a little bit, I think.
We're delayed a little bit. Yeah, I'm going to mute Corey because I think he's catching up and hearing us. I think. Yeah, there he goes. He's muted, and Cody, now you're muted, so only my head. Ooh. But yeah, I went from being really quite the campus radical to being more conservative and thinking, and that was because of the institution I was at as well. And then in my 40s, I think I finally found the space to be, like, know when it's right to lean towards the left or towards the right. I think in Tai Chi they call it the parting of the mane, like when a horse shakes its head and eventually the mane just parts naturally. I feel like I'm finally finding that grace, now that I'm 45. I hope other people don't have to wait that long before it hits them.
Nice.
I unmuted you now. Corey, are you caught up with us?
Yes, sorry, it took a long time to get things connected, so sorry about that.
That's all right. It's great to have you with us.
Thanks for inviting me.
Do you know Cody? Have you been listening to him as the time?
I have. I've been trying to join the conversation. This is my first time on Google Plus. So while trying to figure out how to get on, I've been listening to the conversation.
Well, very cool. So, Corey, meet Cody. Nice to have you connected.
Nice to meet you, Cody.
Nice to meet you.
Corey, will you tell us a little about your journey? What brought you to La Crosse, and what have you been up to since?
Sure. Well, I worked at UW Platteville I finished my 7th year last year. And while there, I worked with a couple of coworkers who went through the online program. And said nothing but great things about it. My supervisor, who is now the director of Residence Life, she was an alumni of La Crosse. I have been to La Crosse for a couple of conferences. I've heard nothing but great things about the program. My coworkers did the online program in 2 years, so after figuring out that student affairs was something I wanted to continue going into and have a passion, decided to go through the program through 2011 to 2013. So I've been out of the program for almost 2 years, 2 years now, but was a really great experience.
And I don't feel like I need to be moderator, interviewer extraordinaire. Cody, please jump in as you see fit. But Corey, maybe can you tell us about what happened once you graduated? Because I think people they've now submitted their final applied research project or their version of a thesis. They're in their final capstone course with me, and that's it. That's all that stands between them and wearing the hood and everything. So I think they're kind of all thinking, should I job search? Will I have free time? What's it like to not be a student anymore?
Mm-hmm. So after I finished the program, I stayed at Platteville for another year doing the job that I was in, balancing the last semester, getting my ARP done, doing e-portfolio, doing the NASPA route. I had a death in the family that happened in my last semester, so it was a lot of things that that kind of piled up. So luckily I was in a job that I could stay for another year. But since then, after I left, wanting to do something different, well, not different, but now I'm at University of Northern Iowa. So I work as a residence life coordinator here, which is kind of the same job, but some more autonomy that I didn't have in my other job, and because of the program, that opened a lot of doors. When I first started to be a hall director, grad school wasn't something that I was really looking at doing because I didn't know what I wanted to do. And I had a mentor in our student affairs, our vice chancellor, who told me that in order to move on, I'm gonna have to get a degree. So after kicking kicking the dirt for a couple of years, decided to do the La Crosse program for that. But I was able to stay in Platteville for an additional year and then did a job search. And so my time at Platteville, my time through La Crosse, and La Crosse is kind of is well known out there as a really big deal. So that was very helpful for me to go to the next step. And now that I'm at the next step, it's weird because I was out of school. I went to school for 5 years, was out of school for 4 years, and then went back to school for 2 years and went back into this whole time management, work all day, do classes all night type of lifestyle. And to not have that anymore, it's a little bit weird. So I find things to do via work to keep myself occupied, keep myself on task.
So you know the landmasters then at UNI.
Yes, Nick was here. He left the year before. He left this last year. So I met him through an interview. But my coworkers worked with him for a few years, and they know him.
Nice, yeah, no, University of Dubuque. Hey, man,
okay, small world.
I know, right? And then Jamie Workman actually was my supervisor.
Okay. Okay, yeah, I heard of her. Yeah, awesome.
So it looks like has joined us as well. And one of the things you might be able to tell us how difficult it is when our microphones are on. So I'm going to try and mute people until they talk, or if you can mute yourself until you talk. Jeet, we're so glad that you joined us. I brought my River Falls cup just in honor of you being here with us. I think you've been watching along and maybe heard from Corey and Cody. Can you tell us a little bit about your journey?
Well, I worked in nonprofits, managing Girl Scout camp for 3.5 years, also doing volunteer management. And then I was at River Falls as a sorority chapter advisor, and their fraternity sorority advisor left. So Paul Shepard, the director of student life, had asked and pretty much twisted my arm in a good way to convince me to do the online program. And so I did the online program and did my, I think it's called a GSI now, the GA position at River Falls in student life. And then I had no prior actual residence life experience. It had just been basically student activities and student life. And so when I went to OPE last year, I was going in completely blind, not knowing what I was getting myself into, just knowing that in talking to Paul that I would probably be able to make it as a residence life coordinator. I had a lot of transferable skills, but I went into it knowing that some schools probably wouldn't even look at me because I wasn't an RA or I didn't have any other like student activity type of involvement. I had 2 final interviews out of OPE, one at University of South Dakota, one at Penn State at University Park, so otherwise known as like the main campus. That's how a lot of people refer to it. And that's where I am today, is the hall coordinator for all of the on-campus housing for sororities. And then I have right now also 2 buildings of first-year students, and then I have a building of upper-class students as well. So I have like the whole gamut.
And I think you're mute all of you. Gee, you're a most recent grad. Can you talk about what the last year's been like for you?
Like the last year of school?
Well, I was thinking more, once you were no longer a student, how did your life change?
It was interesting because I wasn't driving back and forth to focus on getting ready for the move, working basically full-time hours at my other part-time job that I had during school. And then at the end of July, that was when I packed up and moved out here excuse me, and so I've really valued not having all the homework that I did during grad school. I am looking at starting a doctoral program out here at Penn State. So, because that's one of the benefits is we get very subsidized tuition rates. So we'll see. That'll probably happen, if not this coming fall, by this time next year. I've also started helping to fill in as an advisor for the Hall Association because in our area here on campus, we group our student government by halls versus building specific, and so I've started helping to fill in on that. I'm starting to get more involved in department-wide organizations, kind of getting exposure to what we do on campus because we have 4 very distinct residential areas on campus, and then within each of our residential areas there's also very unique aspects, and so just trying to learn more about what we do, why we do. There were 9 of us all that started in August, and then we've had 3 more new staff come on since then, so you could argue that almost half of the staff in residence life is brand new, so we're all learning and figuring things out and trying to make it work. And it's going really well. It's just a lot of stuff to absorb all at one time.
So I'm just delighted that you're all here at the same time finally. And I know that a lot of our students were eager to hear from you about kind of what you wish you had known when you were finishing and wrapping up your program. Anybody want to?
I think the best advice I could give would be to don't sweat it if you don't get hired right away. Because there's a lot of positions that are going to open up, not just in residence life, but I think in general after the school year ends and then even during the summer. And so if you don't get a job right now, it's not the end of the world because there are still going to be good positions that open up. So focus on really enjoying and finishing your degree strong. Whatever's going to happen is going to happen, and that's kind of the mantra I went with last year. Like, whatever's going to happen, I'm going to land in a place that's the best place for me, whatever that looks like. So for me right now, it happens to be Penn State. In a few years, it might be somewhere else. But I didn't sweat when I was going out for my interviews. I just figured I have nothing to lose and everything to gain, so I'm going to do it, and if I don't get hired now, then I know it wasn't meant to be, and somebody will pick me up and somebody will see value in what I have and the experiences I can bring, and hopefully it's sooner rather than later, but if not, I will just keep pounding the pavement until it happens.
I think for me, one thing that I wish I would have known, but I think you easily find out once you start the program, is just how connected and our departments are with the grand scheme of student affairs, if that makes sense. Me being in residence life, you're kind of like in a bubble. The things that you do, you know there's a greater impact on the other part of campus, but you kind of do your own thing. And so knowing how much of an impact that has on other departments and how decisions on other departments impact us, I think through a lot of the coursework that we got and a lot of the assignments that we were given, it kind of challenged us to leave that and have to interact with other people and other departments to see how they work, how we compare, and how we contrast. But it was a lot of legwork, which wasn't a bad thing, but having to network with people that I knew in other departments and offices, but also people I didn't know. So it's all about those relationships that you make, whether you already had those established or once you have to go out and make within the program. So kind of felt like it was a conference, a 2-year conference of meeting with people and and connect with people and ask them questions and find out what makes their offices work and how does that compare and contrast to the work that I do, if that makes sense.
Couldn't find the mute button. I think the only thing I would add, and this is like very specific, and this is just what I've observed from colleagues. So I didn't go through this, but in hearing their stories, I feel like job one is very much romanticized. Like it's going to be the perfect, pristine. This is the type of job I'm going to have and the experience I'm going to get, and that's not the case. Instead, kind of what Jeet said, like just finding something in close to the functional area, and ideally if it is the exact functional area that you want, but something close to that, or the area. I mean, you have to stick within your comfort zone, like what you think you're going to be successful in, because all those things matter. Location matters, size matters, person that you have in your life matters. But to de-romanticize it, I think is important. Because I've had two different colleagues, and actually one person I ran into last night that is looking at a job in Georgia Tech, but his person is at Miami, and so I just lobbed up, oh, so how does your person feel about, like, if Georgia is where you end up? And I was flatly told, well, she better deal with it then. And so the relationships matter. Like, you need to keep, to me, like, when I've had a couple colleagues go through this, like, being close to the area where someone that matters to you maybe is more important than that ideal, pristine job one sort of thing, and experience. And so I think if you go out there and you're trying to find the golden goose, I think you're gonna come up short and be disappointed, and that you shouldn't start your student affairs career, I think, with that kind of tone. It should be, okay, cool, I know maybe I'm going to job search maybe next year, maybe in a year or two when we both job search, or maybe the relationship fizzles or whatever, like, but I've seen a couple colleagues choose ideal job one that they thought was ideal job one, and then been unhappy at that place because oh yeah, people matter, my relationships in my life matter. So that's very specific, but Jeet and Corey did a good job, I think, summarizing everything else I would say.
I wish I could have grabbed a screenshot of when you were describing the person who said, well, they have to deal with it. The three little heads at the bottom were all like, ooh. I wonder if maybe the three of you could talk about, oh gosh, I'm trying to think of all the questions that folks had. Kind of your favorite memory of being in the online program compared to friends or colleagues who've been in on-campus programs. And yeah, just favorite memories of it. And even maybe how it's changed, because honestly, Jeet, the program that you were part of now has turned into its very own partner program where we have 15 students all working at River Falls together instead of just 2. So it's, yeah, the program keeps changing, but I'll mute myself and let y'all talk.
So this is a cliche term, but like the drama that was in our cohort is not at all what I experienced. Some of the issues that happened in the classrooms here at Miami, like I was telling Tori at the beginning, Miami's social justice infusion, along with like deep theoretical and like constant reflection, leaves people mentally drained. And I feel like La Crosse did a nice balance between covering all, like the full spectrum of student affairs, whether it's law to theory and everything in between. But maybe it was just the format because it was a message board, but I never felt at odds, I never felt at conflict with peers, and maybe that is functional, maybe that is good to go through in terms of navigating difficult relationships or whatever, but I feel like we got that anyways in whatever job we were doing as we were going through the program. When it's at the cohort grad student level, there's sometimes I don't know how to help, because it's just like, oh, I've never had to go through that where like no one talks for an entire class because you're all mad at each other. So I was really fortunate that wasn't the case with La Crosse. But then the one time that we did meet at NASPA, it didn't feel awkward, didn't feel uncomfortable. It felt like we did a nice job because of kind of the mix of everybody. we were all really appreciative of where we were coming from. And so then we really took advantage of when we came together, like, oh yeah, let's do lunch and dinner and let's talk and let's just nerd out for a while. So it felt really good.
And just quickly, are you still in touch with members of your cohort, Cody?
I'm Facebook friends with a few people. I think it's like a handful from the cohort, so I kind of keep up that way if that's pseudo-reality. But in terms of meeting up at conferences and stuff, we haven't really organized. I think that comes up sometimes on our like Facebook group, but nothing like real formal because I think we're just all over, and I'm bad at that. I'm a very present person, and so if you're not within like arm's reach, I don't do a good job keeping up. So it's probably me more than anything.
I would agree with most of the Cody said. I appreciated a lot I felt like I mattered, and that was very important. So I'm not sure if people have done True Colors, but personality test. I'm a blue, so I'm very relationship based. So when we started, the people I knew had did the program had already graduated, and there was about 20 of us in the cohort, and John was my advisor, and Jeannie was also my advisor, and I felt like that they cared about me, and that was very, very important because didn't know how grad school was going to work, and the coursework is different, and then you add the online piece where you're doing everything, you don't interact with your cohort in person. It's a pretty scary, and there's a lot of times where I feel like I was by myself in regards to assignments of like I want to compare with someone to make sure I'm on the right track, that I'm doing the right things, and so John and Jeannie were very helpful, and then our cohort about a year in, we lost some people. We developed a Facebook group, and that was very helpful for me and the rest of the group because I would say a concern, they're like, oh, you're ahead of us, or like, oh, we thought about that too, but no one answered or knew how to respond to it. So that was very helpful to the point that when we got to NASPA in 2013, it was kind of like a nerd fest too, where we hung out all the time. I ended up sharing a room with two of my classmates because it was in Orlando and it was like $1,000 to have a hotel room. So I was like, anyone wants a room, you can stay with me. So we bonded very well to the point that I still talk to about a good 2/3 of the group. There was 12 of us that I still talk to on a regular basis, and in fact, I'm going to meet one in Minneapolis this weekend for lunch. So they were a great support system for me, and I'm about people, I'm about relationships, and that's the memory that I have. The people is what got us through. We joke a lot about there were some things in our program that we didn't get told, so we joke and say we're the cohort that time forgot. So sometimes there's hashtags that go out in regards to that, but we have a lot of good inside jokes, but we all really like the program, but the people was what made, and the fact that people cared about me and cared about me getting this degree was very important and crucial in me making it through the program.
Yeah, I think a common misconception is that online means like vacant, that you're interacting with the computer and not with people on the other end of that computer, or that folks can't express care through online mediums. So it's really good, Corey, to hear that you got that. This is maybe a little creepy, and you don't have to answer if you don't want to, but I live near Minneapolis. Who are you coming up here to see?
My friend Melissa Sugarman, she works at the University of St. Thomas. So I'm going to go visit her.
Too funny. She was joining the University of St. Thomas I think she started the week that I left, so she came to my goodbye party at St. Thomas after I'd worked there for 12 years. Yeah, I hope that she loves it there. Please tell her I said hello. Gee, how about you? Anything that you'd add in terms of favorite memories or moments?
I think for us, because we had a couple of people who were not necessarily more tech savvy, but they prioritized and made sure that we had a Facebook group right away, and they really took the lead in making sure that we all felt comfortable And I had actually talked to York. I remember like within the first month, and I was like, this is so different. Like this is so out of my comfort zone. I am so not the person to just dive in and talk and be chatty. We have a lot of people in our cohort that were like that, and it was like no question was off the table. And he encouraged me to just kind of keep, you know, trying, moving forward, and, you know, really putting myself out there. And it was good. Like I needed that push. And by the time NASPA came, it was crazy. Like you couldn't get us to shut up because we were all just talking, and it was like, oh my gosh, this is the first time I'm seeing you in person, and I feel like I've known you for years because I've spent the last 18 months of my life doing all these classes and having all these conversations and just getting to know you. And it was really cool because for me personally, I didn't think that that could come out of just an online program. And so it was really nice to see that happen, and it happened organically. We also had a nice mix of people who had been working in student affairs, both in administrative support roles and in direct delivery program roles, a mix of people who had been in the profession for a while versus people who were just fresh out of undergrad and had been working in it. And so it wasn't skewed one way or the other. It was a very well-balanced cohort, and that was really nice. As somebody who wasn't working in higher ed as long, and also having had much more volunteer experience with student orgs versus actually working on campus, that was nice to hear their perspectives and what they were seeing and engaging in nationwide. And since then, we have stayed in touch. I actually was driving back from Baltimore, Washington, D.C. on an alternative spring break trip with some students, and somebody from my cohort was like, you were 10 minutes away from me, and I was like, I'm sorry, I didn't realize that I was coming that close to you, because if I had, I would have totally called you the day before and been like, okay, we're stopping here for 10 minutes, come. You know, so it's like, we still stay in touch. We still have our Facebook group, and I think, like, NASPA was a really great experience, and there's a lot of us who aren't able to go from our cohort this year, but we're all like, okay, we need to make sure that sometime in the next 2 years, you know, we get to NASPA or we get to ACPA, we get to some of those regional or national events so we can all see each other, because we really did grow and bond as a group in ways that we didn't expect, and we really value those relationships that we have, which is good. I like it. It was an unexpected benefit of being in an online program.
That's really cool to hear. I don't know if you all know this or not, but we no longer require NASPA at the end. Folks can either go to NASPA or present at our research day, and we started that last year, and I think 4 out of 15 chose to come to La Crosse instead of going to NASPA. And this year, only 3 people are able to go to NASPA, but the other 9 will be coming to campus to present their work. The nice thing, I think, too, is that some of the technologies have changed. So we're using online rooms more, and so it's not just a message board where it's all text-based. We're doing a little bit more video and audio so people can see and hear each other more than perhaps they did in previous years. I have to say, I'm talking to the prospective River Falls students in a few days, and I feel like I have a lot of really good information to share with them based on what they can expect as they come in. I'm wondering, for the folks who are about to graduate, one of the things we'll be talking about is crafting a career plan, which always feels a little weird because I have, you know, my career, if you'd asked me 3 years ago would I be where I am today, no, that has never been. Not to diminish career planning and its importance, but my own career choices have just kind of sprung up and been moments where I said yes to opportunities. But as you think about your career plans, it sounds like, Jeet, you're looking at a PhD program. Where do the rest of you see yourselves headed? And Jeet, you know, what other work or academic work are you interested in?
So for me, I had originally wanted to be going back and working with middle school students as a counselor. And when Paul had twisted my arm, he said, well, college students, middle school students, it's all the same thing. It's just, you know, different applications for it. And I was like, okay, whatever, that's fine. And so rather than doing the higher ed PhD, I'd like to do counseling, because that is, as I'm learning more and more, it's not just our sorority students, it's everybody, and our students are more than ever self-identifying when they need help. And that's really where my passion lies, is helping people be successful and work through whatever life is throwing at them. And I really appreciate the work that our on-campus and off-campus partners do to support the students. And so that's the program I would like to go into and get my PhD in, is counseling. So that way I can, whether it's staying within higher ed or moving outside of that, provide that type of support for students.
EDD, PhD, I think is in my future too. I didn't want to start at Miami because in either program, the one that my partner's in or the SAA one, I think really fit with what I'm looking at. I like the EDD just because I really like the practitioner model that La Crosse offered, and I'm sure there are PhD programs that are more practitioner, but I think those are just EDDs then. And so that's why I like La Crosse's online one. I'm really interested in. Like 2 or 3 years ago, when I was like, I know I'm definitely going to do this, part of me said, oh, it has to be on campus. I have to have a fellowship because my master's was online, and I don't want that. Kind of like we talked about at the very beginning, like how does that look to have 2 online degrees? But kind of given, I think, where the EDD program is headed about, whether it's meeting once a year or it's a lot more of this kind of stuff, more conversational, whatever that looks like, I feel like it'll look different than the master's program, and so that's intriguing. But if it doesn't work out, you know, definitely some sort of on-campus EDD PhD program. And then since I've been a hall director for now, this will be year, 7. I'm in 7. So going into 8, maybe end up with 9. If I hit a decade of destruction, like, I need to get pulled out. But a mid-level position, I think, is what I'm looking at now. There's only 4 at Miami, and since I have somebody here that I'm committed to, trying to just go and look anywhere across the country really isn't an option, and it's not something I'm interested in. And it's not worth looking at Cincinnati or Dayton or, you know, somewhere that's like 2 hours away to try to make it work. Like, I'm not about that either. So there may be a vacancy that comes up this year, and if so, I'll try to jump on that opportunity and see if it works out. Part of me is also, hey, we'll see if a certain position in advising or admissions or something else, I keep waiting on like this shoulder tap moment where somebody's like, hey, this job would be really good for you. And that hasn't happened yet, but just keeping, I think, your eyes open and ears peeled for you know, what may be out there. And so I'm working, like, this summer, our job is just a 10-month thing. So I'm working for Student Disability Services this summer just to try to fill in some of the, like, practicum gaps that professionally I didn't have because I was a full-time hall director going through program. So to try to do some various office work. So I did admissions a couple years ago, doing Student Disability Services this summer. I think will be a good exposure and allow me to maybe enter into a couple different avenues in student affairs.
So this is year 8 for me as a resident, as a hall director, and so looking for the next thing to be a mid-level position. I enjoy working with students. I love my students, but there's a point where I don't really want to be living with them anymore. So I'm looking forward to it. Kind of scared me, and I think the program really helped me reaffirm that that's where I want. The next step is kind of that mid-level position. Also during the program, I also worked with our multicultural department quite a bit on some pre-college work, and that was something that I wasn't planning on working with, but my supervisor said, you know, Drew, you'd be good at it, and it was kind of a, as corny as it sounds, like a life-changing experience to work with students to show them that college is an option, to have them stay on campus for a week and do programs and do mentoring, and so that was something that I got some very invaluable experience with, and is an option in case residence life is not a thing for me, or if it's a hybrid. But my next step is within the next couple of years looking for a mid-level position. In regards to a PhD, it's not out of the question. It's something that I think I would like to look into in some due time.
Well, I should tell you a couple of things. Okay, I think Corey and I kept each muting him and so kept going in and out. Anyway, if you're going to be at NASPA, I would love to see you. We're going to be meeting with the 3 students on Sunday, right before the opening speaker. We'll be at the Atrium Cafe of the Convention Center starting at 3:30 p.m. And so if you want to stop by and see an applied research project, would love to see you there. Also at NASPA is the 2nd annual Wisconsin Breakfast, which is for folks who got their degree in Wisconsin or through Wisconsin or are working there now. So look for that in your program schedule. Would love to see you there. And Cody, you kind of alluded to this, but our EDD online program just passed the Faculty Senate last Thursday. Yeah, so if all goes well, we'll see if it gets approved sometime over the summer. It would start potentially in fall of 2016 as a 3-year, fully online EDD practitioner-focused option, and we're really excited about it. A little scared, as you might be, about re-entering graduate school, but also pretty excited. I'm realizing that it's already been an hour, even though some of you haven't been with us the whole time. I'm wondering if there's any final words of wisdom you'd want to share with the folks who are finishing, and then if you have any contact information you'd want to share in case people want to get back in touch with you.
I think just to hang in there. There were some great days with classes, and there are some days where I literally bang my head against the wall. And there are times people say, "Oh, you're joking." I'm like, "Oh no." There are days when things are hard and classes are rough, but that's the point. Like if everyone can have a degree, then what distinguishes you from anybody else. So it's hang in there. There's gonna be some great days. There's gonna be some tough days, but you get some valuable information that will help you. Being a young professional still in student affairs, it kind of boggles me sometimes when there's older people who have been in student affairs for a long time and how much they know and how much they don't know. And the stuff that they don't know is what we're getting in this program. So it sets you apart. It sets you apart from other people. And so hang in there. It's all worth it. At the end of the day, when you walk the stage and you get that degree, it's a great feeling. Although the 2 years you put into it, it's well worth it. If people need to contact me, it's just Corey.Burton, COREE, .BURTON @UNI.edu. I would love to answer any questions that people have, or if they need someone to talk to, someone to vent to, whatever I can do to assist people, I'm willing to do
Um, I think what Jeet said earlier, I guess, just to reaffirm that, like the job search, it's a two-way street, so you do kind of, have to take some of the punches that come your way with rejections, and not, once you get to a place where you can kind of hear out why it wasn't a fit, or maybe you did something wrong. I messed up some of my on-campus interviews, but once you get to a good place to hear that feedback. To not have it be defeating. I think it's important to hear how you did on campuses or phone interviews or whatever format, but you have to get to that good place first, and then to not let it wear you down. Just to go, okay, there's something I can change, or what, that's me, so that's going to be a fit problem that I perpetually have. And so as much as the job has to come to you. I think, and I hear this in the students just from the academic advising part, is you maybe have to open up and be uncomfortable maybe with the job that you apply to, because it may be in a new area, it may be not in the exact office that you want, it may be smaller than you want, but to, I think, cast a wide net, because what I told a grad student that I had last year, when she was like, yeah, I can't stand Oxford, I can't stand Miami, I said, take that with you when you job search again. Like when you do leave this place in a year, when you graduate, you know for the next job to not have it look like Miami. You know what questions to ask. You know how to be better informed. And so going back to that romanticizing job one or romanticizing, the grad school experience, just to know whatever, if it's good, bad, in between, you will definitely develop questions and I think a better focus for the future. And yeah, happy to be contacted. It's Paul US as in Sam ATEC at miamioh.edu, or my office number is 513-529-4427. Happy to help, and yeah, I'll definitely I'll go see your presentation on Tuesday, Tori, and then check out the thing on Sunday afternoon at the cafe.
So I think I would just say you're less than 10 weeks away from graduating. Like, enjoy it. It is such a big accomplishment that you need to relish in the fact that you are going to be wrapping up something that was so instrumental and is going to propel you to the next step in your life. Don't forget to celebrate that, because once you enter the working world, it is very hard to take a break from it. So if you are of traditional age going through this program, get ready, because it's all kinds of fun. But just, have a good time, enjoy, and just roll with it. Don't stress out. Things will happen when they're supposed to happen. And be open and honest. I think, to reiterate what's already been said, be open and honest with what you're looking for. And if it's not a good fit, go with your gut. It's not a good fit. Or at least it's not a good fit right now. So don't be afraid to say thanks but no thanks. Because you don't want to set yourself up to be in a position that you don't want to be in, or at least that you can't work with, for the better part of a year or however long your initial contract is for. Because that will show. It will be very obvious, not just to your coworkers, but to your supervisors and other people in the staff, if you don't want to be there. So don't take a job just for the sake of having a job. That will show. But likewise, if you want it, if you have the hunger for it, that will come through and that will be apparent. If anybody has any questions, Nate Elness, who I'm assuming is watching this, knows how to get a hold of me. But if not, my school contact email is JMS, so like Jack, Mary, Susan, and then the number is 1282 at psu.edu. So JMS1282 at psu.edu is probably the easiest way to get a hold of me. Or talk to Nate. He knows how to find me.
Nate's in our River Falls cohort, a group of 14 students who are going to be finishing this May, separate from our additional online cohort of, I think, 12 who will be also graduating this May. I am going to share a recording, too, with our first-year online students, who I think will really benefit from hearing, like, it's worth it, hang in there. And the best way to reach me is probably at Twitter. Thanks, Jorg, for getting me hooked on that. At Tori Sabota is a great way to reach me. And feel free to tweet me if you're looking for us at NASPA and you can't find us. But I will, with that, close and say, Cody and Jeet and Corey, thank you so much for joining us. It's really a pleasure to hear from folks who were in the program before I even joined it, and know that I have a huge responsibility to carry on a really important tradition that was really meaningful in your lives. So I hope that you will continue to stay in touch with us as your careers unfold. We'll do the same for you. Have a great night, and happy St. Patrick's Day for those of you who celebrate it. Good night, all.
Good night.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.